Hey everybody, this is Dan Stolbarger. This is our Middle East update. And it's the week of the 23rd, April 23rd. We're going to look back upon the events that have transpired this week. Behind me is a PDF PowerPoint that you can get right off of the YouTube page. Just click it and you'll get the whole thing without my head in the way. All right, so let's jump in and take a look at our news bites. That's what we always start with. The U.S. military, here's the bottom line in the Middle East, dealing with Iran. The U.S. military can clear minds, but not the mind. So Iran's capabilities, they may be being degraded, but keep in mind its theology will persist. I keep harping on this. It's so hard for the Western mind, Judeo-Christian foundational thinkers to understand the jihadist mindset of Islam. Okay, the legacy of hate. You'll never make the deal that will bring about any kind of lasting peace whatsoever. So again, when I read this byline, I thought it's so true that we can do all this, but it's the ideology that remains that makes any kind of lasting peace, unfortunately, impossible. Now, again, this is our news bite. So Fetterman, he makes it crystal clear. He says, we Democrats have an anti-Semitic problem. We have serious problems within our party. So if I have to be the last man standing in the Democratic Party, I am proud to proclaim that I stand with Israel. Good on you, mate. Not a deal. A deal that leaves Iran with a 5-year enrichment window and underground missile cities under reconstruction. It's not a deal. It's a countdown. Trump knows what the alternative looks like. Again, the task in front of us now is to prevent Iran from twisting this so-called ceasefire into a source of pressure for a lifeline. This is their tactic, tried and true. It's been said that Iran may have lost wars, but it never loses a negotiation. So none of this should surprise us. They just want to extend this as long as they possibly can. Their aim is simply to survive. Reload, rebuild, back to the beginning. The viral hatred. I read this as a news bite. We caught a ship yesterday. This is Trump. We caught a ship yesterday that had some things on it which wasn't very nice. A gift from, are you ready? China. And Trump says, I was a little surprised. They told me they wouldn't be involved in this. What a world. What a situation. Well, let's move on to our major articles for this week. Part of the reason why there is this so-called ceasefire being extended is that Trump's basically saying Iran has no idea who's in charge. It's a political nightmare there. And until we can trust somebody coming to the table to give us what they see as a deal, I'm going to prolong the ceasefire. We'll talk a little bit more about that. But apparently, days before the temporary ceasefire, before the U.S. and Iran was supposed to expire, the regime's most hardline faction, led by, I'll butcher his name, but led by Ahmad Vahadi, he's the commander of the Revolutionary Guard Corps. He seems like he's He's the one that has seized the reign of power. He's a very violent man, it said. He belongs to a generation that fought in guerrilla warfare. He is the one that, in so many words, why negotiate? We don't want to deal. We're willing to die. If we can die, if there's a catastrophe, if Trump actually bombs power plants and bridges or whatever, maybe that'll bring the 12th Imam coming. So again, it seems as if the political guy, what's his name, Gabiev or whatever, he kind of likes the limelight. He's the president. He seems like he's being sort of pushed out of the way, and this guy seems to be in charge. But that's the reason why we have this so-called 3 to 5 day ceasefire that we're in right now. So again, we keep our eyes on this. This article is called West versus the East, and it's some of the things that I've been referring to. To Iran's current leaders, whoever they are, if Trump carries out his threat to bomb the country's bridges and power plants on Wednesday or Friday or Sunday, as it stands right now, so be it. In view of Iran's theocratic regime, none of that is of any importance whatsoever, so long as the regime survives. A piece of paper that's signed? With infidels at the point of a gun, in their eyes, is nothing more than a Western fantasy. They see anything short of the total destruction of their entire power base as a total victory. And that's why, by the way, that all of these regimes, Iran, Hamas, Hezbollah, they need to be totally, if we're going to have any lasting peace, which, by the way, I don't think is possible, but if we are, they have to be totally dismantled. That's the only way that there'll be any so-called permanent change in the Middle East. And the question is who's willing to pay that price? Who's willing to do that? And now this back and forth with Trump, ceasefires, the Strait of Hormuz, Iran, all of that, it went from a chess game, I think, to a checker game, and now I think it's a poker game. Bottom line is both sides are bluffing. And who's going to blink first? Now, according to recent sources, the ceasefire that Trump has decided that will extend 3 to 5 days. After that, again, who are you going to believe? But one source says that after Sunday, which would be the 5 days, that there will be an overwhelming military strike that will be launched with even greater force than the one the U.S. inflicted on Iran up to this time. The attack will continue for several days, after which the military operations against Iran will cease. Trump is talking about this concept of, I'm going to do the Sherman on them. In other words, you're getting it all. We just read today that the embassy is saying that any Americans that are in the Middle East, specifically Lebanon, Iran, or whatever, get on a plane and get out of there. So again, is it a poker game? Is it a bluff? The Iranians are saying, we got some things you don't know about, and our fingers on the trigger, so bring it on. That's where we stand today. It's now a time war. Okay, so the war with Iran right now is no longer about oil. It's no longer about gas. I'm not even sure it's about nuclear capabilities. It's going to be a single thing. Where we are right now, the single resource is that of time. The question is who's bluffing, who's going to pull the trigger. Iran's economies in the tank. I can list all the conditions of their Navy, their ballistic rockets, all of that sort of stuff. I mean, there's no doubt about it. They're nowhere near what they once were. It would be easy to take a victory lap and say it's over, okay? But it's not. And like I said, all they have to do is survive and they can declare victory. So every American president at about this time sees a ticking clock having to do with midterm elections. Trump's no different. In fact, the pressure may be even on more. What is he going to do? Midterm elections are right around the bend. Does he go all in? Does that impact the global economy? Do we have gas prices not just over $4, but over $8 a gallon? What's going to happen? I think we'll know before the next Middle East update. Yossi Cohen, who was the former head of Mossad, somebody that I respect, a quote from him says, "We must not deceive ourselves. The Iranians will continue to lie, and we must not trust them. No agreement, no ceasefire will change their ambitions. Iran's regime will never change. Stop the illusion." And then one of the last articles here called "The Real War." Hezbollah now, their operational tactics, much like that of Hamas and other terrorist groups, is to embed themselves in their military infrastructure within civilian areas. They hide weapons in command centers and operational assets into densely populated neighborhoods. So when Hezbollah's military targets are located in homes and hospitals and schools within civilian population centers, any efforts to neutralize them carry the tragic possibility, unavoidably, of harming civilians. It has been a strategic and it's deliberate. It's designed to constrain Israel's responses and generate international backlashes against the Jewish nation. And it's been successful. And then the last article, I think, is I just call it food for thought. This is a right-wing Israeli who says, once again, here we go. Israel is being prohibited to win the war against enemies, Hamas, Iran, the Houthis, and Iran, who attacked us, who attacked the Jewish state. We're being prohibited to win the war by our best friend. And then he goes on to say, maybe it's time, maybe it's time for Israel to start behaving as any other independent country would, and finally say, and now quoting President Trump, enough is enough. And one last photo just to remind you, it didn't all begin from the Palestinian perspective on October 7th, but in 1948. So, the last article is reemphasizing the fact that at this point in time, no one really knows who's in control in Iran at this time. And until we do, Trump says Iran's having a very hard time understanding who their leader is. So this internal struggle between the extremists and the moderates, who really aren't moderate as well, has to play out, but I do believe that it has to play out within the next few days. So that's where we stand. Just a reminder to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Pray for the peace. Pray for wisdom for the leaders. Pray for the innocent Iranians. So with that, blessings and shalom.